So as you guys can see here, I have my CT26 coolant line bypass. So this coolant here is supposed to go all the way up into the turbo, and then supposed to be another line that comes right back out and it connects down there to the coolant line. And I have it bypassed on the CT26, and in the video I explained that you're gonna have coolant running through the turbo, and the turbo is really hot. The boiling point of the coolant is usually 265 degrees, I want to say, and turbo exhaust manifolds, they run up to at least 500 degrees, which is already past the boiling point, which is why I bypassed it. Another thing about the 7M GTE is this MAF sensor right here, or AFM, which is airflow meter, or MAF sensor, which is mass airflow. And usually does get damaged, and if you have any stuttering issues, acceleration issues, or just the car just cutting out randomly, usually it's because of this, or you have a small boost leak somewhere, and it affects through, if you have any leaks through this turbo inlet, it will affect the whole engine and throw the whole stock ECU off, which is why I recommend going standalone ECU, just to get it properly tuned. That way you just have less of a headache, because the standalone, it tells you what's wrong with the car, if there's vacuum leaking or, you know, whatever. So a common boost leak with 7M is this plastic pipe right here. I've had mine leak through this tiny little gap here, and it was just hard for me to find it, but eventually I found it. But yeah, this is a common leak, and sometimes the intercooler could be leaking. Pretty much whatever's connected to the boost lines, it's going to affect the whole engine. Sometimes the TPS could be causing the problem too. Sometimes you might be leaking from the throttle body. Yeah. So one of the greatest upgrades is the downpipe for the turbo. As you can see, I got rid of my catalytic converter for this one, so the turbo spools freely. Another thing about this is once you get a downpipe, you get this thing called boost creep, which is pretty much the turbo is over boosting, because now that it can spin freely, you pretty much get the true power of the whole turbo and engine at the same time. So if you want to make horsepower, definitely got to get rid of the downpipe, the catalytic converter, and which in this case, I do have a 2JZ downpipe, the little 3-piece that goes right underneath the car here. Those bolts were a pain to get to, but that's why I just pulled the whole thing off and just did it that way. That downpipe is from my black one, back when I had the stock housing for the CT26 or the T61, because the T61 does bolt right up to the stock intake manifold and stock exhaust downpipe. Another thing about not getting spark on the 7M is the igniter. Sometimes the igniter goes out or the coils go out, and that's why sometimes you don't get spark and whatnot. And if anything, usually you would blow a fuse if it's the igniter. I've had this problem a long time ago. I forgot which one it was, but I remember I put in a bigger fuse. I believe it was AM1 or AM2, but I went ahead and put in a bigger fuse, and I ended up almost frying the fuse. And or maybe it was one of the EFI or something, I'm not sure. But always check your fuse, check the easy stuff if you're not getting spark. Sometimes it could also be the CPS, which I don't think I've ever had that gone out besides once, but that's probably because I put a bigger fuse in or something. I don't know, maybe coolant got in there. Another thing I recommend is if you can be in and out of the engine a lot, doing a lot of fuel injection stuff or fuel rails, I highly recommend getting a new fuel line. And in this case right here, I do have this one rigged up. So Drift Motion does make a bypass hose, that connects all the way down to your, I believe, dampener hose, and it connects directly to your fuel rail. And it works out because usually the stock 7M comes with a stock hard line, and if that ever gets kinked or bent, usually it would leak or, you know, restrict it and cause all sorts of issues. So yeah, I recommend getting a new fuel feed line, because the hard line is just, with all those wires in there, you do have to kind of maze it just to get it fit right. I've had that problem many times on my black one, and I've had it to where the copper washers were still not sealing or it's just partially bent, and it was just all sorts of headaches, you know. But I'm glad they make it now. Another thing, if you're not getting spark, it could be this coil resistor here for the igniter. I remember it started smoking when I put in a bigger fuse. I'm not sure if it popped the fuse over here or if it was in the driver's kick panel. But back when I wasn't getting spark, it was this coil here on my black Supra. Again, I don't remember, it's been a long time. I forgot which fuse it is. But I think this is it. So far, this is all I've got. Let me know if you guys had any other issues. I remembered one of my spark plugs were crushed somehow, I think when I was putting it in or something. Other than that, these are my 7M tips. These are the problems that I have that has caused me a lot of headaches over the years. Maybe there's something I missed. Pause. So, I forgot to mention, if you are taking your 7M to the machine shop, I highly recommend doing a port match, and I'll show you this here. One of my subscribers told me about this, which I should have listened. So as you can see here, this is the intake side, and the left side is the exhaust side. And as you can see, the intake side has one small little port, and the exhaust side has two big ports. Port matching is pretty much you're matching ports, and you're just going to just drill into the block so that it matches the exhaust side, so you have a better cooling efficiency. And as you can see in this other picture, how the intake side just has that one little small hole. I've had this problem before when I turn up the boost and might have hit detonation. I ended up blowing up the head gasket, even with the metal head gasket, on all the intake side. And as you can see on the 2JZ one in this picture here, that it has a really nice port matching on both sides. It looks like the intake side just has one little pinhole for better cooling for the intake side. One thing you could also do is the Zulu mod. As you can see, this is the back of the engine of the head, and there's three little holes up there for the better cooling for the cylinder number 6. I recommend doing that if you do have an EGR system. And in this diagram here, you can see where the EGR recirculates the hot exhaust gas back into the intake, so you can see how 5 and 6 is going to get that hot air back into that intake and could cause detonation. It's supposed to be for better emissions, but I don't see it benefiting this engine. Other than that, I believe that is it. I mean, you might be able to get away if you have a better cooling efficiency, as in, you know, bigger radiator or bigger fan shroud, and probably even a better oil cooling system. But just a heads up, you know, that's what I recommend doing, which is port matching. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and finish off this, well, whatever I'm going to say next. So thank you for watching, guys, and peace out. And there's something going on with her, but I'm trying to redo everything and take it all back out. As you guys can see, it's still a rat's nest, still messy. But all this is just testing, just to see if it works, and so far it does. So I'm going to overhaul this thing eventually and put a cage in her. Pretty much just get her safety ready, so if I do bring her to the track or something or whatnot. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.